The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Buckingham Palace as Sergeant Marcus Wellington adjusted his red tunic one final time. At 28 years old, he had served as a Queen's Guard for 6 years, standing motionless. For hours in the iconic bearskin hat and scarlet uniform that tourists from around the world came to photograph, Marcus took his position at the palace gates with the same precision. He had practiced thousands of times before. His polished black boots clicked against the stone as he assumed the familiar stance, rifle at his side. Eyes fixed straight ahead, face an expressionless mask of discipline and duty. The weight of tradition rested on his shoulders, just as it had 4 generations of guards before him. The early morning crowd was already gathering. Families with excited children pressed against the iron railings, cameras clicking constantly. Marcus could hear their whispered conversations and giggles, but his training had taught him to remain completely focused. He was not just a man in a uniform. He was a living symbol of the British monarchy, representing centuries of unwavering dedication and service. A group of university students approached the gates, their laughter carrying across the courtyard. Marcus noticed them from the corner of his eye, but maintained his rigid posture. Among them was Jake Morrison, a 20-year-old studying abroad from Australia. Jake had been dared by his friends to do something memorable during their London trip, something that would make for a great story back home. As the morning progressed, more tourists arrived. The familiar routine continued, children waving at Marcus, trying to make him smile or move, while their parents snapped photos. He had experienced it all before, people making faces, telling jokes, even trying to touch his uniform. Through it all, Marcus remained perfectly still, a testament to his professional training and personal discipline. The crowd grew thicker as the day warmed up. Street performers appeared nearby, adding to the festive atmosphere. Ice cream vendors pushed their carts along the sidewalk, and the sound of multiple languages filled the air. For Marcus, however, the world remained silent and still. His mind was focused on his duty, his breathing steady and controlled, his eyes never wavering from their fixed point ahead. Jake Morrison pulled out his phone and began recording as he approached the guard station. His friends Emma and Connor stood behind him, giggling nervously as they watched their friend prepare for his planned prank. Jake had purchased a large bottle of water from a nearby vendor, claiming he was thirsty, but his real intentions were far different. "This is going to be epic," Jake whispered to his phone camera, making sure to capture Marcus in the background. "Watch what happens when I surprise this guard. I bet he'll completely lose it." His accent was thick with excitement and mischief as he moved closer to the imposing figure in red. Marcus could sense the approaching footsteps but remained perfectly motionless. Years of training had taught him to be aware of his surroundings. Without moving his eyes, he could hear the whispered conversations and the sound of a phone recording, but nothing could break his concentration. This was not his first encounter with troublemakers, and he doubted it would be his last. The crowd around them began to notice something was happening. Other tourists started pulling out their phones, sensing drama was about to unfold. A family from Japan moved closer, their camera ready. An elderly British couple shook their heads disapprovingly, recognizing the signs of an impending disruption to the guard's duty. Jake took a deep breath and stepped directly in front of Marcus, holding his phone with one hand and the water bottle with the other. "Hey there, mate," he said loudly, trying to get a reaction. "Hot day, isn't it? Bet you could use some cooling off." Marcus's eyes remained fixed straight ahead, giving no indication that he had heard anything. The tension in the crowd was building. Some tourists began to back away, sensing that something inappropriate was about to happen. Others pressed forward, not wanting to miss the action. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves, asking what was happening. The atmosphere shifted from playful tourism to uncomfortable anticipation. Without warning, Jake unscrewed the cap of his water bottle and, with a swift motion, threw the entire contents directly at Marcus. The cold water hit the guard's face and chest, soaking his pristine red tunic and causing his bearskin hat to drip. The crowd gasped collectively, some people screaming in shock at the audacious act. The water dripped steadily from Marcus's face and uniform as he maintained his position with unwavering composure. Not a single muscle in his body moved. His eyes remained fixed on the same distant point they had been focused on before the incident. Water ran down his cheeks like tears, but his expression remained completely neutral, as if nothing had happened at all. Jake stood there for a moment, his phone still recording, waiting for some kind of explosive reaction. He had expected shouting, movement, maybe even the guard-breaking character to confront him. Instead, he was met with absolute silence and stillness that was somehow more intimidating than any angry response could have been. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. Gasps of horror and disbelief rippled through the gathering tourists. An elderly woman from Manchester stepped forward, her voice sharp with indignation. "How dare you? That's absolutely disgraceful behavior," she shouted at Jake, who was beginning to realize that his prank had not gone as planned. Other British tourists joined in the condemnation. A businessman in a suit shook his head in disgust, muttering about disrespectful foreigners. A mother covered her young daughter's eyes, appalled that her child had witnessed such behavior toward a person serving their country. The mood had shifted dramatically from entertainment to outrage. Jake's friends Emma and Connor, who had been laughing moments before, now stood in uncomfortable silence. They could feel the hostile stares of dozens of people around them. Emma grabbed Jake's arm, whispering urgently, "We need to go now." The fun had quickly turned into something much more serious and embarrassing. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to stand in perfect military bearing despite being completely soaked. Water continued to drip from his uniform onto the ground, forming a small puddle at his feet. His breathing remained controlled and steady, his hands did not shake. His face showed no sign of anger, embarrassment, or discomfort. It was a display of self-control that seemed almost superhuman. A security camera mounted on the palace wall captured every second of the incident. Palace security had already been notified and were making their way toward the scene, but Marcus's incredible composure was buying time and preventing the situation from escalating into something even worse. As the minutes passed, something remarkable began to happen in the crowd. The initial shock and anger started transforming into something else entirely. Respect and admiration for Marcus's incredible self-discipline. People began to understand that they were witnessing something extraordinary, not just a prank gone wrong, but a demonstration of exceptional character under pressure. A veteran who had served in the military himself stepped forward from the crowd. His voice carried the authority of someone who understood true discipline. "Son," he said, addressing Jake while gesturing toward Marcus, "this man is showing you what real strength looks like. He's choosing dignity over retaliation, duty over personal comfort." Jake's phone was still recording, but now he was capturing something entirely different from what he had planned. Instead of a guard losing his composure, he was documenting an extraordinary display of professionalism that was teaching everyone present a powerful lesson about character and self-control. More tourists began to speak up in Marcus's defense. A teacher from Scotland explained to her students how the guard's response showed true maturity and strength. "Anyone can react with anger," she said, "but it takes real courage and discipline to remain calm when someone tries to humiliate you." And American tourists started a slow clap, which gradually spread through parts of the crowd. They were applauding not the prank, but Marcus's dignified response to it. The guard remained motionless, but there was something in his bearing that suggested he was aware of and grateful for the support. Even though he could not acknowledge it directly, Jake began to feel the weight of what he had done. The laughter of his friends had stopped completely. Emma was looking at him with disappointment, and Connor had stepped away, clearly embarrassed to be associated with the incident. The fun prank was revealing itself to be nothing more than a cruel act against someone who could not defend himself. Palace security officers finally arrived at the scene, their presence immediately commanding attention from the crowd. They approached Jake with professional calm, but their intentions were clear. Incident had been recorded on multiple cameras, and there would be consequences for his actions against the Queen's Guard. The lead security officer, Inspector Thompson, approached Jake with calm authority. "Sir, you need to come with us. Assaulting a member of the Queen's Guard is a serious offense. Jake's face went pale as he realized the legal implications of what he had thought was just a harmless prank, as Jake was led away for questioning. Something beautiful happened in the crowd. People began organizing an impromptu show of support for Marcus. Someone started singing "God Save the King" softly, and others joined in. The dignified hymn filled the air around the still motionless guard, creating a moment of unexpected unity and respect. A small girl, no more than 7 years old, broke away from her parents and approached the guard. She pulled a tissue from her pocket and gently placed it on the ground near Marcus's feet, her innocent gesture showing more maturity than the university student who had caused the disruption. Her parents smiled proudly at their daughter's instinctive kindness. The incident began spreading on social media, but not in the way Jake had intended. Instead of mocking the guard, people were sharing videos of his incredible composure and dignity. Comments poured in praising Marcus's professionalism and condemning the disrespectful prank. The hashtag #MarcusTheGuard began trending as people shared their admiration for his response. News reporters arrived at the scene. Having heard about the incident through social media, they interviewed witnesses who spoke glowingly about the guard's remarkable self-control and the inappropriate nature of the prank. One reporter described it as a masterclass in dignity under pressure that would be remembered long after the incident itself was forgotten. Throughout all of this attention and drama, Marcus remained perfectly still. Water had stopped dripping from his uniform, but dark stains remained visible on the red fabric. His breathing stayed controlled, his posture unchanged, his focus unwavering. He was demonstrating not just military discipline, but a level of personal character that was inspiring everyone who witnessed it. The crowd had grown even larger as word spread about what had happened. People were coming not to see the palace, but to witness the guard who had shown such incredible grace under pressure. They stood quietly, respectfully, understanding that they were in the presence of something special. As Marcus's shift neared its end, the crowd remained larger than usual, with many people staying specifically to show their continued support. When the time came for the changing of the guard ceremony, the gathering was more respectful and attentive than anyone could remember. People understood they were witnessing not just a tradition, but a man who embodied the very best of that tradition. When Marcus finally stepped down from his post, the crowd erupted in spontaneous applause. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself the slightest acknowledgement, a barely perceptible nod of gratitude toward the people who had supported him. Even this small gesture brought tears to the eyes of many witnesses who had been moved by his extraordinary display of character. Later that evening, Jake Morrison sat in a police station facing charges for assault and public disorder. Watched the news coverage of the incident on the station television, he began to understand the full impact of his actions. The reporters were not mocking the guard or celebrating the prank. They were praising Marcus's dignity and condemning Jake's behavior as an example of how not to treat people in service to their country. The story spread around the world within hours. Videos of Marcus's stoic response were viewed millions of times, with people from every continent commenting on his incredible self-discipline and professionalism. Military personnel from various countries shared the videos, using Marcus as the example of the highest standards of service and conduct. Jake eventually issued a public apology, admitting that his prank was disrespectful and wrong. He paid a fine and was required to perform community service. More importantly, he learned a valuable lesson about respect, dignity, and the difference between humor and humiliation. The incident changed his perspective on how we should treat others, especially those in positions of service. Marcus returned to duty the next day, wearing a fresh uniform and carrying himself with the same quiet dignity he had always shown. He never spoke publicly about the incident, maintaining the professional discretion that had made him such an exemplary guard. But his response to that water prank became legendary, inspiring countless people around the world and proving that true strength comes not from retaliation, but from maintaining one's dignity and principles even in the face of disrespect. The incident at Buckingham Palace became more than just a viral moment. It became a teaching tool about character, respect, and the power of responding to negativity with grace, Marcus Wellington had turned what was meant to humiliate him into a moment that honored everything his uniform represented.